Good morning, everybody. I gotta tell you, I think this is the first event that I've keynoted where people have mimosas in front of them, and it's a different dynamic that I'm actually really enjoying. So maybe, yeah, cheers to everybody. I'm gonna save my mimosa for after the talk, but good plan. So first of all, thank you, ISC West and SIA Women in Security Forum, for having me. This is such a delight. I've worked in and around defense and security for more than 20 years now, and oh my gosh, I love to see so many amazing, badass women together in one place. So many congratulations to all of you. I want to give a huge shout out, of course, to the Power 100. Like, you really are a badass group of women. And I think what I love most about communities like this is not only are you out there doing the work and leading from the front, but I see you open doors for each other and say each other's names in rooms where opportunities arise, and that to me is the most beautiful thing. So way to go, and thank you again, SIA Women in Security Forum, for having me here today. So as we get started here today, I'm gonna do something maybe a little unorthodox. I'm gonna invite you all to join me in my inner circle, which is about to get a little bit bigger, admittedly. Because I want to share some stories with you here this morning that are very personal to me. This is a lived experience that I went through a number of years ago, and frankly, I'm still kind of going through today, which you're going to hear about shortly. And this was an experience that I think has shaped me into who I am now, certainly as a leader in the defense and security space, but also just as a human being. And I spent a lot of years not talking about these experiences publicly for reasons you're going to hear soon. But when I did start sharing them in public forums, first with trusted friends and then mentors and then settings like this, what I found is a lot of people, especially women in historically male-dominated fields, have experienced similar things. So it turns out this isn't just my story. This is in many ways our story, and that's why we need to talk about it. So welcome to my inner circle, or maybe we're in each other's inner circles now, and I look forward to the conversation. So here we go. So the year is 2019. We're gonna rewind the clock a little bit. And I think from the outside looking in, if you had looked me up on social media back in 2019, you'd probably think this lady has her act together. Like, everything's going well in her life. At that time, I was working for one of the biggest US defense and security contractors on the planet. I'd been there for more than 15 years, much love for that company. I honestly thought I was going to be a lifer there, and I still love that company to this day. Had a fantastic job. I had executive support and sponsorship and mentors who were actively championing me, so I was, by all accounts, on the fast track to the top, which was a wonderful thing and a privilege I'm still grateful for. I also am very fortunate to have an awesome family. At the time, I had 2 little boys. Now I've got a preteen and a teenager, so God help us all. And I know some of you are going through that right there with me. But amazing, amazing family. And we had decided as a family unit that we were going to make a geographic relocation to follow my job, which is also a massive privilege. That was a big decision for us as a family, and we made it. So everybody around me was investing in my career, which I appreciated so much. Not to mention, you know, I've spent my entire adult life working in worldwide public sector. As you heard in the intro, these missions matter to me, just as I know they matter to so many of you. I mean, it's personal when you've been working in that space for more than 20 years. I am still to this day fully bought in on those missions, and so I was excited about this job that I was doing at this defense contractor. So this is a story of privilege, and I know it. But there's this interesting thing that happens sometimes where you can look at somebody's social media feed and think they've got their act together, but that person might not be feeling what is reflected on their feed. And that's the situation that I was in at that time. As my kids would say, I was on the struggle bus. I was probably driving the damn thing. Like, I was just feeling crummy on a regular basis. My imposter syndrome at the time was at an all-time high. I was actively questioning whether any of this was for me. Like, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of the Peter Principle, but I was wondering if I had reached that level of my career growth where there was nowhere else to go. The job I was being asked to do I thought was bigger than me and possibly exceeded my skill set, and I was wondering if I could even do it. And so the question that kept running through my mind at that time was, am I enough? Like, from a work and a life and a career perspective, am I enough? And so there we were, we were living in this brand new to us state. We were trying to put down roots in a new community. I was working in this brand new role at a new location for this defense contractor, and my job was all about digital transformation. So I felt like I was in a real position to drive lasting change for that company, a very legacy, defense-oriented company. I was working at a 1940s avionics manufacturing plant, and you can guess what that looked like. It was a little bit legacy in nature, but a super awesome site. And so I thought, this is a big deal. Like, I can really drive change here, not just for this company and not just for this site, but perhaps for the defense and security ecosystem at large, because a lot of these companies were starting to think about what digital transformation meant to defense and security at that time. So my role is about leading that for this site and for our business unit. And just out of curiosity, has anybody in here worked on digital transformation before? I suspect so. See a few hands? Okay, so for anybody who's been a part of digital transformation, we talk a lot about technology and tools and process, but interestingly, I think digital transformation is mostly about cultural overhaul. And culture is one of the most challenging things to change inside of a company. So I knew this was going to be hard. I stepped into this job knowing it was going to be hard, and that's actually why I wanted it, right? Hard is an opportunity to grow. So I was excited about it. Change doesn't come easy, right? I think as human beings, we don't like how change makes us feel, and I knew that. I expected that. And what I found was when I landed at that site and landed in that new role, there were some naysayers. There were some people who were not bought in on that digital transformation and the change that we were trying to drive, and that's okay. I expected that. There were also a few folks who got pretty loud in their dissent. And you know what? That's okay. I expected that too. As long as we're keeping it respectful, that's feedback. That's a good thing. What I was not prepared for in that stage of my life and career was for the dissent to get personal at times. I did not see that one coming, and I was not ready for it. And for a few folks, it really did start to get personal. Now, a little bit about me. I'm a people pleaser. I don't know if there's any other people pleasers in this audience, but I was raised to be a people pleaser. I think it's a nature and a nurture thing. I wanted to make everybody happy. I wanted to make sure everybody at that site was bought in on the change and saw themselves in it and felt like they had an opportunity there too. And here's the slightly embarrassing part. I wanted everybody to like me. So I was desperately trying to win everybody over on the change we were trying to drive while trying to keep my likability quotient up, if you will. And so one day, I come into work, and I'd been there for about 6 months at the time. This is pre-COVID, so I was in the office. And as soon as I cross the threshold of my office, I can see my desk, and I can see that there is a bright yellow Post-it note smack in the middle of it. I know I didn't leave that there. So somebody left me a note overnight. That's cool. And so as I approach my desk, I see that it's handwritten, obviously. There's no name, no identifying characteristics on it. And I go over to it, and the note has 4 words on it. And that note says, "You don't belong here." Yeah, that was my reaction too. Thank you. A few days later, to add insult to that injury, there was a very public email that went around. It went to my administrative assistants, but a lot of people were copied on it. And it was from a person at the site who was openly questioning my authority and my very role, and who said I couldn't possibly be successful there because I was, in their words, an outsider. And I will tell you what, these 2 things, those 2 notes, absolutely destroyed me. Like, took me apart in a way that I have never been taken apart before or since. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I think as somebody who was, and still is, a woman working in a historically male-dominated field, and as an imposter syndrome sufferer, this was like the culmination of all of my worst fears being realized in a very public way. And I thought, oh my God, they have figured out that I'm a fraud. They're right. Like, I don't belong here, and somebody finally called me out on it. And I didn't know how to process any of this. The fear, the shame, the embarrassment, this feeling of utter failure. And so I made a terrible mistake in that moment. And I decided to hold all of this close and limit the blast radius and not share it with anybody in my life. I didn't tell a single soul, not even my spouse or my best friends or my mentors. I didn't mention that note to anybody. I kept it close, and I tried to internalize it and process it all myself, which in hindsight was a terrible mistake. I should have recognized at that time that change is hard. Change is hard. And you shouldn't and can't try to win every single person over on it, but instead, I started to dwell on those voices. I mean, they lived with me. Those voices walked side by side with me on a daily basis for weeks and months to follow. I let those haters and those naysayers take up residence inside my head. I went to bed at night and I heard their voices. I would wake up in the morning and suddenly I began dreading going to work, to the point where there were mornings I couldn't even get myself out of bed. And this was a job that I loved. I had spent my entire life working to get into that role. I was so excited about it. I loved the mission, and suddenly that commute was excruciating. All because 2 people told me that I didn't belong there, and I hadn't even asked their opinion. So I found that I had allowed those haters and those naysayers to redefine my internal narrative about myself. I really thought that I no longer belonged because that's what they told me. And so, I'll just say, years later, once I finally started opening up about this, a mentor shared something with me from Eleanor Roosevelt that now I think about all the time, and I want to share it with you. Hopefully you've heard it before. She said, "Kate, nobody can make you feel badly without your permission." But man, I didn't know that at the time. And I had clearly given those people my permission because I just felt so crappy about myself. And so, advancing the clock a little bit, some weeks go by, and along comes a day where I'm set to deliver an all-hands message at the site. We had about 1,000 people at the site. I think the engineering and security staff was roughly 600 people. I had delivered all-hands messages at that scale many times before, and I was generally pretty confident in my ability to land a message. But something happened on that day where I tripped some threshold, I would say, of mental health issues on that day, and I found myself an hour before the talk, the all-hands meeting. Found myself on the floor of the women's restroom at that site, suffering a panic attack, all alone. It's not something I would wish on anybody. I suspect there's folks in this audience who have been through something similar. If you've ever or maybe never experienced a panic attack, it can manifest in a lot of different ways. For me, having not had one before, as far as I know, I honest to God thought I was having a heart attack. Like, I thought, I might die here on the floor of this restroom. What is happening to me? And still, I was so in that shame cycle, I didn't want to call anybody for help, which makes me sad and emotional even now to think about. So I stayed on that floor for the better part of an hour. I remember being deeply afraid. I also remember being deeply embarrassed. And eventually, over the course of that hour, I pulled myself together, put on my bravest face. I went out there and I delivered that all-hands message, and I'm telling you, that was not my finest hour, but I got through it, and I'm still really proud of myself for that. But I walked away from that experience with some emotional scars, quite honestly, and I developed, unfortunately, a deep fear of public speaking, something that I'm still working through to this day, if I'm being honest with you. It's a journey. Despite those fears, and despite those scars, and despite all of the crap that went along with this experience, I will tell you now, 6 years removed from it, I am so grateful for this entire experience, which sounds crazy. I am grateful for that note that landed on my desk, because it led to this panic attack, and it led to this experience that was one of the scariest and darkest times of my life. But it became the impetus for me to go and get some help, and to make some changes in my life that I hadn't even thought that I needed to make, but clearly I did. And so after that day, after I picked myself up and went about that all-hands message, I went back to my office and I called a friend. And I started reading more friends and family, and in the days that followed, and I started talking to my mentors about the experience, and it was painful, but just to vocalize it and give it name felt like it was giving me some of my power back, honestly. And so eventually I also engaged a career coach to help me work through this terrible fear of public speaking that I had developed, and I even enlisted a mental health counselor, a therapist, to help me work through a lot of the challenges that had brought me to that point, and I still talk to that person on a daily basis to this day. And so I share all of this because I want to share what I learned from this experience. I'm a far, I'll say, more rounded and resilient human now than I was 6 years ago, directly as a result of this and all the work that I've put in since then. And I also hope that by sharing this experience, if there's anybody out there today who is going through something similar now, or has been in a space where you have felt or been told that you don't belong there, I want you to know a few things. First of all, you are not alone in that. You do belong there, and it is okay to ask for help. That is not a weakness, that is a strength. And it took me far too long to figure that out. But this is something we, especially as women, have to talk about with each other. And I think this is why, thank you, again, Security Industry Association and the Sea of Women in Security Forum, thank you for having me here today. I know we have a lot of change agents in this audience right now for a variety of reasons. I'm looking at you. And I've read the profiles of the Power 100, and I know when you work in this security industry, what you do is absolutely critical to the safety and security of businesses, of institutions, of nations, of critical infrastructure around the world, and you are doing that work in an extremely challenging and also extremely consequential time. You have to be a change agent in order to show up and be effective in a landscape like that. So I want you to know the work that you all are doing matters, and you are making a difference on a daily basis. And I also suspect some of you, just like me, you might be showing up in environments every day where you look a little bit different, or act a little bit different, or think a little bit different than the norm. Some of you might be challenging the status quo with your very existence. You might be the physical manifestation of change in the environment that you are working in. So whatever the case may be, if you see yourself reflected in these stories today, or if you have ever felt like you don't belong, I want to reiterate it. You're not alone. You do belong here, and it is okay to ask for help. That is not a weakness, that is a strength. So I have learned, by putting in the work in the many weeks and months and years that followed this, that note that was left on my desk, the intent was to break me. I honestly believe that. And it taught me resilience instead, which has been one of the greatest gifts, not just in my career, but in my entire life. Thank you. And here's what I know now about resilience. This is a learned skill. It's a learned trait. I didn't realize that. I thought this was something you either have or you don't, but this is something we can all invest in and practice with intentionality and grow for ourselves, the skill of resilience. And so today, what I want to do is I want to share with you some foundational lessons that I learned from this whole experience that now help contribute to my resilience as a human being and as a leader and as a change agent. And these, again, they're not just career skills. I think these are human skills and life skills, and these belong to all of us. So we're going to talk about some lessons. Let's dive into lesson number 1 that I learned from experience, which is to prioritize your wellness. So I now work at Microsoft. Actually, today's our 50th anniversary, so happy birthday to Microsoft. Thank you. Sure, lots of that was for Teams, I'm sure. Y'all are clapping for Teams. Don't tell Microsoft I said that. At my job at Microsoft, one of the things I love most about the company is that there is a big emphasis on the holistic employee, right? The whole human, not just the person that sits in that seat and does the work every day, but the human being. And I really honestly appreciate that. And so related to that, one of the first things that I got to do when I joined the company was to take a training course on high performance mindset by Dr. Michael Gervais. Anybody familiar with Dr. Michael Gervais' work? Yeah, see a couple hands. So this guy is one of the leading sports and leadership psychologists in the world. I don't know if you remember the fella who did the high altitude jump from like the edge of space a number of years ago. It was a Red Bull sponsored thing. Dr. Gervais coached that guy to help him get over some of the mental hurdles that he was working through. This guy has coached professional athletes, Olympians, pop stars, CEOs, people who are at the top of their games, pushing the boundaries of what human beings are capable of. If you're not following him yet on social or listening to his podcast, you should. He's a remarkable human being. And so when I took this class, I thought, this is going to be amazing. Like, how fortunate am I to take this class? But I was a little bit surprised by the content, because what Dr. Gervais focused on, more than anything else, was the topic of rest and recovery and wellness as being foundational to high performance. Why didn't I think of that? That never occurred to me. And what I learned is that we cannot be great unless we learn how to take great care of ourselves. I think as women, we're really good at taking care of everybody else. Sometimes we forget to take care of us. So this was a big time eye-opener for me. And what I learned in hindsight is my body, leading up to that panic attack, I thought the panic attack was the first sign that something was not well. But in hindsight, there were so many other physical indicators along the way that not all was well in my life. Racing heart, sleepless nights, irritability, even with people around me that I loved for no good reason, which is hard for me to admit. Eczema. During periods of high stress, my skin was literally reacting to the stress that I was putting myself under. And foolishly, I had been ignoring all of that stuff. It's easy to chalk it up to something else, including perimenopause for the ladies in the room, right? So I kept pushing myself harder and harder and harder. I thought I could do it all. I was running full tilt into absolutely everything, and I was exhausted, like exhausted, barely able to keep going. But I didn't want to admit that. I was spending too many hours at work while simultaneously carrying the bulk of the load at home. I was saying yes to every single thing that came my way without thinking about the inherent no that's on the other side of every single yes that you say. I was putting everybody else's needs above my own, and I was deprioritizing my own health and wellness on a regular basis, and I'm seeing an awful lot of nodding heads right now because I think we as women do this a lot. On the days where I found myself running out of time, you know what I pushed off my plate? I pushed me off my plate. I pushed off the me time. I deprioritized my workouts. I stopped going outside. My dog looked at me like I was batshit crazy because I was no longer walking the dog. One of my neighbors even asked if my dog had died because he didn't see us outside anymore. That is a true story. My sleep schedule started falling apart. I stopped doing the simple things that keep me centered, like at the time, reading a newspaper over a cup of tea. I don't recommend that for centering these days. I was trying to hold up the sky all by myself, and I wasn't taking care of me, and man, I was just crumbling underneath the weight of that. And so my body was shooting off all of these warning flares, and that panic attack was the biggest one of all up to that point. And my body basically hit the only stop button it had available to it and said, hey, lady, what you are doing is not sustainable, and you have got to knock it off before something even worse happens. And thankfully, I finally listened, but it took a major event for me to pay attention to that. And in hindsight, I am grateful for that. It was terribly scary to go through, but it honestly saved me from myself. I'm 43 years old now. Thank God it happened when it did, because now I have the rest of my life to live, and I'm a lot more resilient as a result of it. And so what I have learned from this experience is that you cannot be there for everyone else if you don't prioritize your own needs and well-being. That is a true statement. Full stop. You cannot be there for anybody else if you don't prioritize you first. I'm sure a lot of you flew here to get here today in Vegas. I did too. What's the speech they give you? The safety speech? Put on your oxygen mask first before you help anybody else with theirs. And that applies here as well. So for me, I took this course. I started learning just how foundational rest and recovery and wellness are, and I had to figure out what my ingredients were for that. And this is going to be personal to everybody. It's different for every single human in this room. But for me, it's a few things. Quality sleep. I am no good to anybody if I don't get 7 to 8 hours consistently a night. And that actually changes throughout the seasons of your life too. But I have to invest in my sleep schedule and be regimented about it, or else my base stress and anxiety levels just start to rise. Physical activity. You know, I now do block time on a daily basis, multiple times a day for those walks. Thank God my dog is still alive. The dog appreciates that a lot. But I just need to get outside and blast my eyeballs with some sunlight every now and then. And it really does help to recenter me, even if it's 5 minutes between meetings at work. Not to mention, there's so much emphasis on physical fitness, but I think mental fitness and mental health is a muscle that we have to invest in as well. And now I do this with intent. A few things on the mental fitness side for me: practicing gratitude is a big one. I hear a lot of people who keep gratitude journals. It may sound cheesy, but for me it works. I can get up in the morning and be grateful that the sun came up and that the birds are singing and none of them shit on my car, and I am grateful for that. And I will write that down, and that gets my day off to a good start. Sorry for the swearing. Your insecurity, you get it. Yeah. Managing my own morale is another one. And this is something I learned from one of my mentors. Keeping tabs on kind of your internal temperature. Like, how are you feeling? How are you really honestly feeling? And do you need a break? Do you need to step away? Do you need to just give yourself some grace every now and then, right? Managing my own morale actively, in addition to helping manage it for all the people around me and the team that I'm responsible for. Going to therapy. I now have a therapist that I love. She's an amazing human being. We do the Teams calls every 2 weeks, come rain or come shine. And some days it feels like more rain than shine. And sometimes, it's seasonal. Other times you're in a sunny period of your life. But I keep investing in that mental health muscle, and it makes all the difference for me. And I make time for the things that bring me joy, like the photo that you see on this slide. And in fact, I'm going to go to Breckenridge with my kids tomorrow, and we're going to get some more snow turns in. Be intentional about it, right? Prioritize your wellness and take a holistic approach to it. It cannot just be about your physical wellness. It is the combination of physical and mental and spiritual, and you need to invest in those things in whatever way works for you, and then prioritize it in your life. So lesson number 1 is prioritize your wellness. Let's go to lesson number 2. Find validation within. This is a biggie for me, and I think this is a biggie for a lot of women. When that note landed on my desk, it took me apart. Like, I was done in a way that I had never been done before. It destroyed me. And when I really spent time, especially in therapy, thinking about why that was, you know what? That one's on me. I don't condone whoever left that note. I still don't, to this day, don't know who did it, and I probably never will, and I'm fine with that. It's a crummy way to treat another human being, but I'm the one who controlled my reaction to it. That is on me. And I allowed that person to make me feel bad about myself. I could have controlled that, and I did not. I don't know who the person was. I didn't ask their opinion. And I basically opened the door and gave them complete and unfettered access to my headspace. And I took that note to heart, and I allowed it to destroy my sense of worth. And when I think about why that is, what I learned is that I believed that my worth was tied up in what other people thought of me. I think especially for women, that one slaps, because we're kind of taught to do that, right? We are taught that we're not intrinsically worthy, but that it's tied to the opinions of others. And I want you to listen closely when I say this, because I have had to relearn this for myself. Your worth is intrinsic. Every single person in this room is beautifully made and wonderfully flawed and a constant work in progress, and you are innately worthy simply by being you and simply by existing. You do not have to earn that. I'm going to clap that out too. And I didn't know that. I did not know that. And what I found when I started talking to people, first friends, then family members, then crowds like this, I found that a lot of people, especially women in our culture, also don't know that. And we have an opportunity to change that narrative, and that's why we have to talk about it. We have to stop associating our self-worth with what other people think of us, and our validation needs to come from within. And we also need to teach our daughters and our sisters and our friends how to do that too. Another thing that I learned in the years following that note, it sounds cheesy, my kids would be embarrassed of me in this moment, but like, haters are gonna hate. Like, it's literally in the name. That's what they do. We can't expect anything else from them. And what I found is, sometimes when the haters are hating, that's an indication that you're on the right track because you are changing things. And I think as women who are working in what has been a historically male-dominated industry, we represent change. We are the physical manifestation of change in some of the environments that we're showing up to on a daily basis. And so when we show up, and when we step up, and when we lead change, and when we challenge the status quo, we are going to run into that hater behavior on occasions, and we cannot let it stop us. And we cannot let it bring us down. And so I have learned over the years that internal validation is what we need to strive for. Internal validation is when we can self-affirm our own efforts, and we don't need somebody else to tell us that we're good enough. We just know it. That doesn't mean you don't take feedback. Of course you take feedback, but you know what you're worth, and you're at peace with yourself, and you are comfortable in your own skin. And that self-validation muscle is such a critically important one, and it is one that we as women need to nurture and cultivate for ourselves. So I have spent a lot of time putting in the work, trying to shift that self-validation muscle for myself. I'm still a work in progress, but I'm much more at peace with who I am and with what I'm putting out into the world, and also with knowing that I do belong, and nobody can tell me otherwise. I don't have to seek everybody's approval now, and I don't have to be universally liked. And now I consider myself to be a recovering people pleaser. And I invite y'all to join me in that journey. We need to grow the size of that club. So I'll tell you what, if that note landed on my desk today, if I walked into Microsoft tomorrow and there's a Post-it note on my desk that says you don't belong here, it would still sting. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm human. That would still hurt. But I'd probably take about 10 seconds, and then I'd crumple it up and I'd try to shoot an alley-oop in the trash can or light the damn thing on fire. Because I know who I am, and I know what I'm worth, and I know where I belong, and I did not ask for that opinion. Thank you very much. So thank you. So again, be intentional about making that shift in your own life. From external validation to internal validation, find your validation within. Lesson number 3, own your authenticity. I know authenticity has become a little bit of a buzzword lately, but as cheesy as it may be, own your authenticity and step into your story, the fullness of your story. About 3 years ago, a number of years after the note incident, I had recovered enough, I think, on my speaking journey that now I was starting to sit on panels again. And so this particular panel event, I was on a defense event. It was actually on an aircraft carrier in the harbor of New York City, which was pretty cool. That was like one of 2 times my kids were impressed. The other time involved Minecraft. Generally, they're not impressed with Mom. But so I sat on this panel surrounded by like 2- and 3-star generals, industry leaders. It was a fantastic event, and I was proud of this panel. I thought we had put on a really great discussion. We had challenged the status quo. I thought we had advanced the ball, and so all of us come off of this panel and we're feeling pretty good. And as often happens at events like this, audience members approach you, and I love that. That means we're gonna keep the conversation going, right? And so I'll never forget it. 2 people approached me and they pulled me to the side and they said, "Hey, that was fantastic. My colleagues and I were sitting there in the back having this debate while you were talking. Maybe you can settle it for us. Did you attend an Ivy League institution, or are you an MIT graduate?" Yeah, I had that reaction too. I always try and assume positive intent, with the exception of that note on my desk. I always try and assume positive intent, and at first blush, it sounded like a compliment. But something about it did not sit right with me, and I went immediately into the phase. And so when I thought about it, what I recognized was that question demonstrated elitism, conveniently disguised and packaged in a compliment. And that's not cool. Come on. So the underlying implication there is that certainly I either didn't belong on that panel or couldn't have performed as well on that panel if I didn't have some prestigious educational pedigree, right, or have graduated from one of the top institutions in the country. And you know what? I reject that. That's not my story. And so this was an opportunity for me to share my truth. And so I gave that person an honest answer, and I owned it. Those are awesome institutions. I know a lot of people who graduated from them. They are fantastic. That was not my journey. I'm a first-generation college graduate who went to a branch campus of a state school in rural Pennsylvania. I put myself through that school on scholarship, and I picked it because it was the best opportunity for me to get a good education at a good price. And you know what? It's worked out pretty okay for me so far. I think a lot of us are gonna encounter moments like that, especially when we work in security and tech and engineering and defense and places where we might not look like the norm, whatever the norm is. And we have a choice to make in moments like that. We can pretend to be something that we are not in order to fit in, or we can own our story and tell our truths. And I know that can be hard sometimes. It can be wildly uncomfortable, especially if you feel like you don't belong. It can be hard to show up as authentically you in a workplace or a community or an industry or a culture where you don't look or sound or act like everybody around you. And we do live in a world where there is so much noise and pressure and social media campaigns about conformity or what we need to look and act and sound like. But there is power in authenticity, and there is power in our stories. I think we need more real people in this world, and we as women working in a male-dominated industry need to share our journeys, because there are so many different paths to a career in security and defense and technology, and when we share all the different roads that we took to get here, I think it helps other people, especially other women, to see themselves here as well. It is hard to be what you can't see. Let them see you. And back in the early days of my career, I will be honest with you, I did not always do a good job of this. I certainly wasn't rolling up to meetings in a Barbie pink blazer, but I do it now with intent. I like your blazer, by the way. You look fabulous. I spent a lot of time in the early years of my career trying to be something that I was not. There were a lot of occasions. As a woman in engineering, as a woman in defense, as a woman in tech, I was the only woman in the room. And I know a lot of you are living that on a daily basis. I thought, at first, that if I wanted to succeed, I needed to be something other than what I was, because I didn't see me around. And so I tried to be something that I was not. I tried to project more masculine. I tried to look and act and sound like everybody else. I dressed less feminine. I tried to talk more like a dude. I do still swear a lot. I don't know if that's as a result of this or not. I didn't talk about my kids. I didn't talk about my life outside of work. I didn't talk about my small town upbringing or the things that bring me joy. I tried to be somebody else because I thought that the things that made me different were going to hold me back. And so I held them close, and I didn't show them to anybody for probably the first 3 to 5 years of my career. And at some point, I realized, you know what? I have an opportunity here that I am not taking. And I have a platform that I am not stepping up and owning, and I need to change. By trying to assimilate and by trying to change who I was, I had become part of the problem instead of part of the solution. And so I began making a conscious effort to start showing up every single day, authentically and unapologetically as me. And now, when moments of bias arise, and look, they're still going to rise up on occasion, I try and see those moments as opportunities instead of getting mad or sad about it. And it's hard. I have days where I feel all the feels, but I do try and look for the opportunities in those moments. If somebody makes an assumption about my background based on my education, perceived gender, geography, when somebody asks me to go fetch them a coffee because they think I'm the administrative assistant in the room, which still happens to this day, it's an opportunity for me to show them what a technology executive looks like, and she is a woman. So when we show up as authentically ourselves, when we own our space, and when we share our truth, it creates space for other people to do the same. And I think we have a responsibility, especially as women, to go out into the world and be seen so other people can see themselves in our positions. And we need to do that not only for ourselves and for each other and for this entire community, but for all the people who are coming behind us. That is a responsibility that we wield, and we need to step up into it. So own your story is what I ask, all of it. Yes, the good stuff and your achievements, also the not good, so good stuff, the challenging moments, the hardship, the struggles, and the triumphs. Own it all, because your authenticity and your story, those are your superpowers. And that can change the world. Thank you. Okay, lesson number 4. I love this one. Be brave, not fearless. I think these two words are often mistaken as synonyms, but I think these two words are very different from one another. There is a huge difference between brave and fearless, and we live in a culture that places huge value on fearlessness, right? But fearless is the absence of fear. It's easy to do things when you're fearless. I don't think that's realistic. I think bravery is the real differentiator here. Bravery is when we choose to act not in the absence of fear, but in the face of it. Feel the fear and do it anyways. Be brave, not fearless. Every time you step into a new role, at work or in your community, that's bravery. Be brave enough to suck at something new for a while. Every time you step up and lead change, even when people say it's too hard or it can't be done or we've always done it another way, that is bravery. Be brave enough to launch your side hustle or go back to school or whatever the thing is that you've been thinking about for a while, but the timing has never been right or the stars have never aligned. Do it anyway and start today. Whatever it is that scares you in your life, be brave enough to do it. This is something that I practice every day in my life with intent, and I think it has been the single greatest differentiator for me in my career. I get a lot of young people who ask, like, Kate, how did you achieve what you've achieved in a relatively short period of time? And for me, I'm a good engineer. I don't think I've ever once been the smartest person in any room, but I've almost always been the bravest. And that is a career accelerator. When you put yourself in positions where you might fail, but more than that, you are definitely going to learn something. That is an accelerator, and we do not do it enough. Seek out the things that scare you, and then bet on yourself to figure them out. So many of the best experiences in life, I believe this in my heart of hearts, so many of the best experiences in life sit just on the other side of our comfort zone. You can see them. They're right there. You just have to be brave enough to go after it. Whether it's rappelling down a building, like the image on that slide, or speaking on a stage, or raising your hand for a new job or a stretch assignment, those experiences are scary, and they are also incredible. That's the sweet spot of being a human being. Every single time we do something that scares us, we grow as humans. Feel the fear and do it anyway. So I want to ask you something, and you don't have to share this with anybody, but I want you to give it real thought today and in the days that follow. When was the last time that you intentionally did something that scares you? And especially so for your career. Are you seeking out stretch assignments at work? Are you applying for jobs that you're not 100% qualified for? Nowhere close, in fact. Are you applying for jobs you're maybe only 50% qualified for? Are you advocating for yourself, and are you asking for what you're worth? And are you seeking out opportunities to grow as a human being? I hope the answer to all of those things is a yes, and if it's not, spend some time reflecting on what it would take to get to a yes on those. I want every single person in this room, especially the women, to be the type of person who does those things on a regular basis. Be brave, not fearless, and you will find that your life expands in direct proportion to your bravery. All right, we're moving past lessons now, but I want to share something with you before we adjourn here today. There's a speech that I love. This is a very famous speech by Teddy Roosevelt. You may have heard it before. It's called The Man in the Arena. And he delivered this on a European tour back in 1910. I keep a copy of this in my desk for all of the moments where I don't feel big enough, or I feel like some challenge far exceeds my capability, or maybe I'm not feeling like I belong somewhere. I pull this out and I look at it, but I've taken some liberties with this. Apologies, Mr. Roosevelt. I have replaced the male pronouns with feminine pronouns because that makes it speak directly to me. And hopefully it speaks to some of you as well. Insert whatever pronouns makes this personal, but see a women in security, this one is for you. And I give you the woman in the arena. It is not the critic who counts, not those who point out how the strong stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the woman who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends herself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows, in the end, the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if she fails, at least she fails while daring greatly, so that her place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. That one gets me every stinking time. I could run through a wall every time I share that. That is my battle cry in a world that is constantly telling me that I'm not enough, or I'm too much, or that'll never work, or you don't belong here. Because we do belong here. Every single one of you belongs here. You are that woman in the arena, fighting the good fight, showing up every single day, making your job your own, affecting change, yes, making mistakes, and yes, getting knocked down, but getting up again and again and again. And that's not fearlessness, that is bravery, and that is every single one of us. It's me, getting support after that panic attack, realizing that I need some help, picking myself up, being brave enough to face my fears, standing on stages again, and trusting that I can do anything, even in the face of naysayers. And it is every single one of you. Fighting your battles, living your life, owning your space, and showing up as authentically you every single day. And ladies, that makes me so proud of all of us. So, in closing, I want to offer this to you. It is our differences and our challenges and our broken parts and our struggles. It's not just the fancy social media reel. It's all of these things that make us human and who we are. They shape us into the unique individuals that we are, and they give us the qualities that we can use to build connections with each other and to make a difference in the world. The broken parts is where you let the light in. The world needs us, and this nation needs us, and our families and our friends and our community, including this community, need us exactly as we are. And so this is my call to action for you today. I know it's Friday. I know a lot of you are going to head back home today or this weekend, and when you do, when you go out into the world, when you return to your communities, when you go into your workplace, I want you to be authentically you and really own it. Really own it. Celebrate and use your unique superpowers for good. Don't show up as what the world tells you to be. Show up as you. Share your truth with the world and with each other. This is an amazing community. Use it. Dare greatly in everything that you do, and keep showing up as that woman in the arena, because the world needs more of that woman. And if we show up as her together, there is so much that we can achieve. Thank you very much. See you, Women in Security Forum. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have an awesome day. Safe travels. I'll be here if anybody wants to chat. Keep being you. You're doing great things. Thank you.